So, Petrona, welcome to Elle en a fait du chemin. She's gone a long way podcasts.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. We want to talk about the stigma, removing the stigma around mental illness and how you succeed even while dealing with mental illness. Before we talk about that, because I find it's a bit dark, bring us back to your childhood.
That's a very interesting, interesting way for me to start. Well, I don't. There's a lot I could say about my childhood, but predominantly, I could definitely say that moving around quite a bit was a theme, and for me, I think the loss of my mom at a very young age it impacted me quite a bit. It's tough growing out without your own mom, not anybody else's mom, not your stepsister's mom, but it's tough having that connection, or growing up without that connection.
So, would you say that was a trigger for your illness?
Well, I mean, depression and anxiety comes on by so many different factors, and that could have been one of them, definitely. Yes, yes.
So, at what age did you start noticing, like, I would say symptoms, and what were the symptoms? If you're comfortable sharing.
Of course, yeah. I think around the age of 23. So, depression and anxiety can definitely start later on in life. It doesn't have to start up there. There are cases where, it could start maybe at 15, 16. But in my case, I've always just been such an outgoing, bubbly person, an overachiever. So, for example, at one point in time, I was taking so many classes, going to university, doing this, doing that, traveling, real A-type personality. You couldn't come to my house and sit how you wanted on my couches. I was going to tell you how to sit on my couch, what to do,
Okay, I better watch
you can't sit
myself
on
right
my
now.
couch like that. But and I think a little bit of OCD. But I started noticing it when I stopped answering phone calls to go out. My first apartment I lived on the main, and so my house was always the party central. The place you go, I don't know if you knew Buena Notte or Globe or any of these places,
In
Club Med.
Montreal,
Yeah, so on Saint Laurent,
au Saint Laurent.
these were the it places, especially Buena. So because I used to live like walking distance, a lot of people used to come to my house and we used to go out and my phone used to ring all night. And at one point I was looking at my phone and I stopped answering. So I said, you know what? I'm just exhausted. I work 40 hours a week. I'm in university full time and I'm trying to, maintain a good social life. So, and I traveled quite a bit. So I just figured, it's just fatigue. And then the fatigue didn't really go away. Then the thoughts became sadder and sadder. And I stopped answering the phone less and less. And even at that, it wasn't enough because we didn't grow up knowing anything about depression.
Right.
We were told that that was a white man's disease or white man's problem. And that, because, in the black community, we're so founded on faith. So growing up in the church, God can help and cure everything. God can heal us. So we're often led to push that aside. So that's what I did. I pushed it aside. I said, you know what? I'm a strong woman. And I used to get calls from. I remember one of my friends. She called me one time, and I go, "Hey, I'm struggling." She goes, "I'm not worried about you. I'm not worried about you." And I'm like, "Can you?" I think that people see black women and black men, right,
Okay.
as very strong because, as descendants from slavery, we're always considered the strongest, the people that are more resilient, but not always the case. It's not always the case. So back to your question, age of 23, I started noticing changes, but then it took me 10 years to actually get help.
Okay. So 10 years of suffering. Were you able to work still?
I pushed through, of course. I'm a strong woman, right? That's what I was led to believe. So on the days where I knew I really couldn't, I would call work and, or just stay home and I coped the best way I knew how to cope. one thing I can tell you that really helped me during those times, I became obsessed with the gym because I read a magazine article and it said, if you worked out, it helps with depression. So I was constantly at the gym, working out, working out. I used to go to the gym twice a day, okay? And then it was really a life-changing event that prompted me to go to the hospital to get medication.
Okay, so were you hospitalized, if you care to share?
Well, so I suffered with depression and anxiety, and particularly anxiety while I was driving. So for me, driving, I worked in the car business. I worked for BMW. I was used to driving like sports cars at 100, I shouldn't say at what speed, sorry. I go to the Grand Prix every year. I never miss it. I'm always at the race. I'm a
Right.
car girl. So when that started happening to me, though, that was very alarming because I worked at a dealership in Brossard and I lived in Montreal.
Right.
And here I was another morning driving to work. And I knew I suffered with the anxiety. So instead of taking the carry, I would take another way around, take the scenic route, always getting to work late, right? But that morning I blacked out on the Champlain Bridge. I couldn't see. Driving a company vehicle that wasn't mine. So in the back of my mind, even if I was going through the worst panic attack, I'm thinking, do I have insurance? I have insurance on this car. What if the car falls from the bridge? And I was just there stopping. I just stopped in the middle of the traffic. So if you know the old Champlain Bridge, you had one lane going this way from 8 to 10 a.m. or maybe 9:30 for the rush hour. So you have one lane going that way and one lane going that way on the same part of the bridge, right? Because they used to block out sometimes the other side, okay? So there's no way for me to escape. Normally getting a panic attack, especially on a highway, if there's 3 lanes and I start to feel myself, going into the panic, I would automatically go to the furthest lane, right? The left lane. Even if it's the fastest lane, but that's how my brain worked. It's an irrational fear, just to prevent a full-blown panic attack. But that morning, I had nowhere to go. So I'm in the lane, and the traffic controllers, they see me stop. I'm stopping traffic. They said, "Hey, bouge ton char." That's all I heard. It's by the grace of God. I do thank God because I knew that if it wasn't for God that morning, I would have lost my life or I would have lost the life of somebody else, right? I would have crashed into someone. I mustered up all the strength that I had in my body. I drove straight to the hospital. I remember I just sat there and I said, I can't do this anymore. Yeah. And that's the first day. From that day on, I started taking, in this case, I needed sedatives. So even coming here today, I'm not driving, right? It was maybe last year or 2 years, no, I think last year, somebody said to me, why are you forcing yourself to drive if you know you're going to have panic attacks, right? So that's
Right.
another aspect that, we forget sometimes with anxiety and
So, like you said, right now, that's the way you cope with it. It's like you avoid that fear just to make sure that you don't go
after
into
many years,
after many
yeah.
years, after many years. And how do you feel about that?
It's very life-changing, as you go through life, sometimes you're hit with different kinds of illnesses, right? So someone could be hit with something and they're not able to do some things that they used to be able to do.
Right.
So for example, I can't just pick myself up and just do whatever I want anymore because I gotta think, how am I gonna get there? It's different.
It's not as
it's
simple anymore.
different. It's a different life, but I for the last 9, 10, 11. So for the last 11 years, I have gone through lots of therapy. I've gone through, which was also taboo at the time when I first started suffering. I seek professional help. I'm an ambassador for Relief. And even in speaking sometimes, to corporations or in conferences, I always say mental health, it's not just you're going to take a medication or you're going to take an antidepressant and then within a year you're going to feel better. I used to call my doctor year after year. I'm like, okay, I'm good. You could wean me off of this thing now. It's enough. And he'd be like, are you kidding me? No way. After the 5th year, oh, wait, look, because you gain weight. And for me, that was another thing. especially as someone who was always in the gym, my body started changing because antidepressants just slows your metabolism down. And then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to deal with this aspect of it too. So after the 6th year, could you take me off? I was on medication for 9 years. And just the other day, I messaged my best friend and I said, if I can do anything to go back on antidepressants, I would, because it's so different a life when after having received that kind of relief and that kind of help to go back. But I make it a point every day to push through. And the days where I know I can't, instead of beating myself up, which I used to do 20 years ago, come on, you're so stupid. You're so, pick yourself up. Now I allow myself my own self-compassion. For example, coming here today, it was really, really hard. It was really hard. I had a mental breakdown yesterday, looking at myself in the mirror, crying, saying to myself, I can't take it anymore. Just pressures just of life. But because of all the therapy and all of the tools I've been giving along the years, I know, okay, how to get through certain situations.
It's very touching that you shared that even yesterday you had a breakdown. So I thank you for
Oh, my
coming.
pleasure. Yes,
Honestly,
yes. A lot of people are going through a lot of things. Post-pandemic, I've heard so many like out of this world stories.
right.
Life is not the same. So we are experiencing, many of us are experiencing mental health crises. Children are experiencing, even animals. My dog, she's on 2 sedatives, right? So
It's
it's
something
it's
else, eh?
really, and now we're able to talk about it a lot more. Many years ago, 20 years ago, I would have never accepted this invitation. You kidding me? No way.
Right. But now transitioning to, because when we look at your Facebook, your Instagram, your social media, you're out there, you're beautiful. I see success. When I think Petrona, I think success. You're an author. Talk to me about I would say your journey towards success and how you define success now.
That's very interesting because, in as much as you see me as a success, I'm still trying to be a success, right? And I think that stems from the fact that I wanted to be a lawyer. I went to law school, did not like it, and I dropped out. But because I went to law school and I did get the acceptance, my family were like, oh my gosh, she's gonna be a lawyer. And so for me, I saw myself like, okay, and then my life just took its own, it just took its own journey. I ended up in the car business. I was very successful in the car business, especially as one of the only Black women to work for some of, like, I'm talking about, $500,000 cars, $600,000. So one of the only women still to this day. And so in terms of success, for me, it's definitely, I would say, the quality and the wealth of your relationships. Because all of these accolades, we're told, especially Caribbean children, when we migrated to North America, because we didn't come to Canada first, when we migrated to North America, we were told, okay, you need to get a solid profession, you need to do this. So when I didn't have the solid profession, even if I went to university and I paid $30,000 for my university degree, I still didn't feel at that level. So that also brought up a lot of depression. I was depressed when I got my first degree. I was depressed. Then I went back and got a second. I forced myself to get a second degree. I didn't complete it because I went through mental health distress because I was so overworked, so like I gotta be successful. Then I think you started to know me when I owned the store, the grocery store. So when
Today, I think so.
Yes, right? So I kept forcing myself, pushing myself to live up to a way where I think that my family and society wanted me to be as an immigrant woman, right? And for me, my success is being at peace with who I am, where I am. I go to bed every night, not every night. Some nights I am stressed. But if when
Yes,
I
you.
go to bed at night, I always like to say, I like to sleep, thinking this situation, there's a lot of, I try to also live by integrity. So, okay, I did this thing today. I'm very proud of that. If there's something that, I want to work on, I try to focus on that. But I want to go to bed every night thinking to myself, I did my best today. I made a difference. Even if the difference is just, shoveling snow on my neighbor's side, whatever, or doing something, or, sending a surprise to someone, or just sending a message on WhatsApp and telling someone, hey, I love you, you matter, you're killing it, you know what I mean? And, so that's success for me. It's not all of the other stuff. That stuff doesn't matter.
Wow.
For me, at the end of the day.
That's so deep, because when I'm gonna, take it back to the pictures. We see you traveling so much. We see you like in the car industry taking pictures with people who are way up there, that are well known. You're part of the Dynasty Gala team, if I'm not mistaken. No?
They just nominated me 3 times. I never won. But I was one of like the first. I think I was nominated TV personality, influencer, or some. I think it was influencer. But then for me, when they nominated me as author, the transition to becoming an author from wanting to be a lawyer, it's very, very different. But every time I get a message with someone saying, "Thank you so much for writing your book," I think that that's actually part of my success. But there's still some days where I go, God, illuminate me, show me, because it's not just, wanting to go back to school to get a master's degree, or wanting a large house, because been there, done that. Have you know what I mean? You could be in a really large home and be so miserable, so like, you know what I mean? So at the end of the day, it's always just being in aligned with, what God wants for our life. And every time I say, God, what do you want from me? I get the image, I get the vision, and then the phone rings. So, that's
Wow.
success. That's success.
That's great. Talk to me about the book, actually.
Well, the book was a lot more successful than I thought it would be, really. And I remember, because my first book was about business, right? So I wrote my first book about blogging and how to make money blogging and being an influencer, but I just did not connect to it, right? So when I did launch the book, I remember saying, I'm not feeling this. But there's a part of that book where I talk about depression and anxiety. And I used to do private book readings in my home. So I would invite strangers to my home, would sit there, read the book. And in one of these gatherings, people were like opening up. So the part where I was like, I lost everything. Because when I first went into business, I did not do a startup. I bought a business. So when you buy a business, your money, you're spending it up front, right? I had no business loan. The only person that really pushed to help me was my dad. I had no support, right? I had employees. I never owned a grocery store. So, all of these expenses are coming in. And what was I saying? I remember.
About the book? You were talking about
and
the
I
book?
remember. So
Book reading?
I wrote about this. Losing everything.
Right.
The dealership used to call me. Where are you? We're coming for your car. I used to get in my car, hide it from the dealership. Yeah. Because I thought with my faith, I would be successful. That's fine. That these things are only temporary. The money will come. The money will come. Then the money never came, and I had to close my store. And I stayed. Mind you, I lived right next to my grocery store. Okay, I moved to be closer because my butcher used to come there at 6 a.m. Do you know what it is living right next to your failure?
That's powerful.
You're living right next to your failure, another dream down the pipe, right?
Right.
And so, anyways, I wrote about that in the business book. So I decided, you know what? If people are really into having discussions about living through these things, and really what struck me was one of my book readings, I had a stranger. I never met the woman. Okay. She saw the post on Instagram. She came to my house and she shared with the people sitting around that she wrote a suicide note the day before. I go, oh my God. And then somebody else opened up. I go, hey, y a quelque chose ici. So I started writing the book. The book is a skeleton. The book is very thin for 2 reasons. I took out a lot of things. I removed a lot, right? And I wrote it that way as well for people like myself who prefer audiobooks. and don't have the time to like I just don't have the attention span to sit there with a book anymore like I used to, you know?
Right.
The book is a skeleton of what it should be. And even when I started promoting the book, certain people in my family heard me on the radio, and I got a call from a family member. And this family member sat me down, and he said, I am so disappointed in you for writing this book.
Tell me about it. Oh, wow. And that must have hurt.
Yeah, that was my dad. Yeah. His wife, his ex, well, not his ex, sorry, his wife, my stepmother heard me on the radio and made the book about her. The book was about my experience, you know? Yeah, so again, I never thought that. So when I saw the Amazon orders coming in, I sat there, I was like, is this for me? Like, are you kidding me? You know? But I am working on a follow-up book with different details, different point of views, because I wanted people to, I don't know if you read it, but I
No,
wanted
not yet.
I wanted the people to read it to really get insight of what somebody feels when they're experiencing mental health distress.
That I think will be a very, very interesting topic and in very interesting way of bringing the subject on the table, especially post-pandemic, because we lost many entrepreneurs that I don't want to name. It was so sad,
Yes.
and that's not to name others. So.
Yes. It's catastrophic in the Black community. People don't realize how the Black community is affected by mental health or mental health challenges.
Right.
We take it so for granted. When a Black woman goes into her job and there's a predominantly white, let's say, atmosphere or Caucasian atmosphere for her to work, okay? Just going in already, she's tense. That's trauma on the body, okay? You tense up. Then you may have one or two employees who may say such uncomfortable things, you know? Hey, je reviens de vacances, puis hey, je suis foncé comme toi, you know? Look, you know what I mean? Or can I touch your hair? These are all microaggressions, right? Then you have our Black men, when they leave the home, there's a target on them.
Right.
And the world, believe it or not, the world does not treat our Black men the way they deserve to be treated.
Indeed.
Right? Indeed. And we're all absorbing this. We're absorbing this energy. We're absorbing this energy. And then what happens? One day you just snap. On top of everything else you've had to deal with in your life.
So very true. So some turn to drugs, some turn to sports, alcohol.
I was addicted to alcohol for a while in university. You know, I remember drinking one time and I ended up in some apartment and I'm standing with a man and a woman and they're like, hey, we're going to rape you. And I'm like, how did I end up here?
Oh, interesting story.
Oh, yes, I was drunk.
Wow.
Well, I never really shared that before. It was the first time it came out, you know?
Yeah.
But what do? Then, you know, and then what happens? Society pushes it. I did see Justin Trudeau announce the other day a few millions or, you know, a couple millions that he's giving to the Black community to help. And so the Black community, what we need easier and better access to mental health professionals. Okay?
Right.
When I was looking for a mental health professional, I remember the first woman I went to see, I was like, this is a Caucasian woman with blonde hair, blue eyes. She has no idea of what I am going through because of her privilege, right? And even going through, counselors throughout the year, it's so hard. Do you have the money too? The other day, this psychologist was telling me, she goes, oh, it's only $200 per session. I go, oh, only $200 per session? Oh yeah, but I can help you in 6 sessions. Are you kidding me? Who has that kind of money anymore?
Right.
You know what I mean? That's already, what, $1,000 or over $1,000? It's not accessible.
Exactly. But that's a point. That's a very interesting point. But listen, we could talk about this forever. Do you have a message of hope for anyone that is going through a rough patch, I would say, and is not seeing the light, you know?
The only thing I can say is that if you are a person and you're feeling thoughts to unlive yourself, do me one favor, call the suicide hotline. You wouldn't believe the effects it is having a human-to-human conversation with someone. Okay? It's very important for people to understand as well, they're not alone. There's many, many people like them. And if you can reach out to, and I know sometimes, when I do hear the cases about people that are unliving themselves or have unlived themselves, they did reach out to someone. So therefore, if anybody reaches out to you, on the flip side, if anybody reaches out to you and they say, that's it, goodbye, take it seriously. Don't joke about it. And don't think that this person is just asking for attention. You better get in your car, you better go to their house, and you better kick down that door, right? So that's my message.
I hear you. I hear you. Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.